Well, we come to the end of our summer quarter, and today we're looking at the last lesson. Let's review it together. For the summer quarter, it has been entitled Many Faces of Wisdom. In unit number 1, in the month of June, we looked at wisdom in the book of Proverbs. Then in unit number 2, for the month of July, we looked at wisdom in the Gospels. And now for the month of August, unit number 3, we have looked at faith and wisdom in the letter by the Apostle James. And it has been a look at the letter by the Apostle James and the interaction between faith and wisdom, and some practical advice about faith in action. Well, our lesson for today is lesson number 13 for August 30th, 2020. It's entitled Wise Up. And it comes from James, the 3rd chapter, verse 13 through 18. And the 5th chapter, verse 7 through 12. Well, as we review our lesson today, Solomon lays the groundwork for us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Then it is the Gospels that showed us the pathway that is laid by the words of our Lord Jesus Christ, that his word is able to make us wise unto salvation. Then finally in this quarter, it has been James that has instructed us that it's not just good for us to know the way of wisdom, but we must ask God for wisdom that we might be able to live out our faith. And so it has been James that has been giving us some practical advice. And look at the lesson today of what James says. James says that this is a wise man, one who is full of wisdom, who has knowledge from above. And this knowledge is pure, peaceable, considerate, easily entreated, full of mercy and good fruit. It is impartial and it is sincere. That's James telling us that what a wise man displays in his life. These are some of the fruit that the wise man bears. And it is James who tells us that we need to be praying for wisdom right now, even as we're living in these end times. Now, recently in our series of sermons, we have been looking at what we as Christians should be doing in these end times. And we're concluding that series of sermons on today. But it's a reminder for all of us that we are living in the end time. And it is James who tells us that the Lord's coming is drawing nearer. It is James who said that the Lord coming is near and that he even stands at the door. And James wants all of us to understand that as we live in these end times, and as we live in these last days, it's going to take wisdom for us as Christians to be able to live our lives. What's the fear? Without wisdom, James says, we could face condemnation. But with wisdom, we can avoid condemnation. With wisdom, we can stand firm. We can be patient in suffering and afflictions, even like Job and the prophets, but it's going to take wisdom. It's going to take wisdom to be able to stand in these last days. But again, James tells us, if any man lacks wisdom, let him ask it of God. God will freely give it to us. And with that wisdom that comes from God, even though we're living in some perilous times in these last days, the wisdom that comes from God can help us to be loving, to be kind, to be forgiving, to be merciful, to be gracious, even during these times. And the joy that we have is that if we stand firm, if we stand holding on to our faith, stand believing, then in the end, we shall be saved. So pray for all of us that we might have the wisdom, that we might be able to stand even during these last times. What a great, great quarter of lessons.